All right, welcome in, everybody. It is time for Full Court Press right here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. And Rob Vino, we always start each show with a recap. And I'm going to let you go first today because my recap has a segue into our first game. But before we get into it, how about those Siena College Saints? They're going dancing for the first time in 16 years. I didn't realize as a kid and a student how spoiled I was. Because, of course, when I was a young kid growing up in the Albany area in Schenectady, we had Paul Hewitt. We had NCAA tournament teams with Paul Hewitt. Rob Lanier took us to an NCAA tournament as a 16 seed in a year they weren't supposed to go. And then when I was in college, my senior year, we go and we beat Vanderbilt. And then the 2 years after that, a win over Ohio State and another NCAA tournament appearance where we fell short against Purdue. And then nothing since then, Rob. It's just been, I just assumed every couple of years Siena would go to the NCAA tournament. And it has been the longest drought for them since becoming a Division I program. But that was put to bed last night. A phenomenal game plan by Jerry McNamara to force Kavere Kennedy to shoot the ball. And shout out to GMAC and the Saints. I know I have a few Siena people that watch this show. So let's go. I can't wait to see where we get seated in that bracket. But for the recap, Rob, talk to me if you want to add anything there, go ahead. But talk to me about how your night was last night.
Yeah, first off, yesterday I commented on not wearing Siena green. So now that they've won the title, I show up in Siena green. Big win by them last night against Merrimack. Good night. Not great for me, though, Adam. Wrong opinions on a couple of games here. Portland State being one of those. Montana State, I did notice that inside our full court press package, you helped us out by playing the other side stronger. So
I was going to say, that might be the first time we were on like opposite sides of a side this year. I think that's the first time.
That was a really good showing out of Montana, no question. Portland State still could not hit a three in that game. And the Gonzaga team total, over 82.5, only make it to the high 70s. Took a long while for them to get rolling. I think they put up like 28, almost 30 points over the course of the last 10 minutes. But until then, boy, Santa Clara, and let's give Santa Clara credit. I mean, when this tournament started, commented on how much I liked the team. I thought the St. Mary's matchup was bad for them. Didn't prove out to be. They figured it out second half. And then, of course, last night played Gonzaga real tough to show the committee that they do belong. I'm glad they get their seat in there. I'm certainly not glad Gonzaga didn't get the 83 points last night. So we look to hit the board a little better today. It's not often I have to come on here and say I did lousy, but last night I did lousy.
Listen, you have more of it. You're overdue from just how well you started the season. It's me that can't afford the bad day or two right now because I had a bad November and December. I'm still in makeup mode from those first 2 months, whereas you kind of padded your bankroll nicely in those first two months of the season. So it's going to happen, and that's going to be my segue into our feature game today, Rob. Because I got to be honest, when I got off the show, you and I usually chat for a minute. I go, a lot of times with the way that my day works, because I'm prepping for this show, cramming to get all the stuff ready, I usually, finally eat something for today for the day after this show. And so, Rob, I get off the show. I do our timestamps quick. I go eat some lunch. I pull up my odds screen, and Baylor is a 6.5 point favorite.
Yeah.
And I gave him on the show at 3.5, or I gave him to clients at 3.5. And I think by the time we got on the show, it was still 4. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself in that one, Rob. And Baylor was nowhere to be found. Totally the wrong side. Didn't matter if you had 3.5, 6.5, 10.5, whatever. It could have been any number. That was the wrong side. They just did not show up for that game. And credit to Arizona State. And this is the segue into our feature game. Credit to Arizona State. They had a great game plan. They had more energy. And you could pretty much tell first 10 to 15 minutes of that game that it was going to be a real issue for Baylor to come back. And even, they made a little bit of a run, but ultimately Arizona State got it done. Now on a quick turnaround, Rob Vino, it's Iowa State. And even as I've criticized Iowa State this year in the context of the top 10 teams in the league, This is a much tougher ask, in my opinion, for Arizona State. So talk to me. Iowa State, Arizona State, it's another early Big 12 tournament tip.
Yeah, it certainly was a tough ask not too long ago, Adam. I mean, 4 days ago, they played Iowa State and got run out of the building in Ames, 86-65. So that led to, which I guess it's not yet a signed, sealed, and delivered deal that Bobby Hurley is fired. I mean, I guess it's like 95% sure, but I haven't seen. Yesterday, I was reading something that said, the soon expected to be released head coach, and came out here yesterday, and an only opinion, like I always say, we're not in the locker rooms. I didn't think that Bobby Hurley was the type of coach that the kids would rise up for. They did rise up yesterday on Baylor. Really didn't have a chance, like you explained. But again, now they play a team that I would say somewhat underachieved this season. I think you'd probably agree that we thought better things for Iowa State. Not that they were a bad team, but that we expected them to be more in the elite conversation than they are currently. That sets up for a tournament like this with Iowa State, a chance to regroup, a chance to reestablish, a chance to get their minds right for the NCAA tournament. So I would expect they come out here fired up. Now, the only question, Adam, here is the point spread, which I'm not willing to lay 11.5 with Iowa State, simply based on the fact that, and I've said this before, their scoring is inconsistent. And I've played maybe 2, maybe 3 team totals that I thought were well within their range, given the opponent they were playing. And Arizona State would fit that bill again today. Soft defensive type team. Iowa State should score, and they just don't manage to get to their team total, leave me a couple of buckets short, whatever. So offensively, it's been sporadic for them, which makes it difficult to lay the 11.5. First time in the building here for Iowa State, first tournament game. So do they get adjusted to the rims right away? You never know the answer to that. Some teams come out hot as heck. Some teams come out ice cold and then proceed to get better as the game goes on. Their team total in this one is 79.5, right around the range where I've been playing them. I'm so tempted, rather than lay 11.5, to just play Iowa State to get to 80 today against this defense and against the team that maybe, see, here's the question, right? It's what, again, 2020 hindsight is great. But did Arizona State play their game yesterday and leave it all on the floor yesterday and come out and get beat, 86-65 like they just did 4 days ago by this team? Totally possible. Not willing to lay the 11.5, but I do think Iowa State should score here, Adam. I don't see a lot of problem with them reaching 80, a game that's team total right now at 79.5. So I would probably look that way.
Yeah, I am tempted to play the 11.5. I do think the number, is pretty close. So I made it 12.1. So I don't see a monster number edge there for me. But just, go back to that game a few days ago. And you want to talk about, okay, what happens if Arizona State comes out hot, or if they've got the maybe the upper hand in the early going because they've had a game on this court. Rob, Arizona State in that game over the weekend was up 4 at halftime, 41-37 in the season finale. They led that game, and Iowa State still covered the 16.5 at Hilton on the strength of a 49-24 second half. And that's where this game sort of is going to be decided, in my opinion. The difference between Baylor and Iowa State is Baylor is atrocious defensively. They're just horrible. It's been a thing that's been going on for years now at Baylor. Like, because if you remember, not 5 short years ago, Rob, although it seems like a long time ago, Baylor wins a national championship with guards that defended as good as anyone in the country. And it's just the teams that Scott Drew has put together the last few years have been really bad defensively, and this one is no different. And Arizona State had a great game plan, and they were able to exploit Baylor's very weak defense. My problem, the issue I kind of see here with Arizona State is Iowa State is still really good defensively. Like, even with the issues they have putting the ball in the basket, their defense is so good, Rob, that on defense alone here, I could see Iowa State creating a double-digit margin. But then you might be in the scenario where, okay, I'm sitting there with a minus 11.5, which looks like it's pretty open and available out there. Is Iowa State going to go up 15, 17 and let them back in? Or is this a scenario where they're just going to like step on their throat, go for the jugular and finish a game? Because remember, this game, sleepy 12:30 start, a little bit different than final game of the year at Hilton Coliseum. Like that's a different environment. So I like Iowa State. I still would bet them at 11.5 if you wanted to bet this game. But for me, I just did not have a big enough edge in the number to want to lay that many points. And that's just that simple. If I was picking this game, Rob, well, which we are because we do a show where people want picks, I'm laying the 11 or the 11.5 with the Cyclones.
Yeah, it sounds like we could be on the same side parlay here because, like I say, if I'm going to play, it's going to be Iowa State team total over, thinking they get to 80. I just, you said something front part of your analysis where I thought back in watching that game Saturday. You jogged my memory. There was an insane second half run in that game by Iowa State where all of a sudden I looked up. I've got 3 monitors on at once. And this one didn't have volume, and they're losing the game. And I kind of looked up like that at the screen, and all of a sudden saw Iowa State up by double digits. And I'm like, what the heck happened there? What happened there, for anybody who didn't watch, was the opening 10 minutes of the second half went 24-4, Iowa State, 24-4. Defense came in, locked down, offense went crazy. And Arizona State is so susceptible to giving up huge point totals that, I kind of feel this way. I'll say it again, that Iowa State needs to reestablish themselves as a credible. Remember you and I were talking about, you had a conversation with somebody you were talking about Iowa State maybe being fraudulent for the national title.
Right. For where they're ranked.
Right. And they need to correct that because that's the perception now. And it wasn't the way we talked about them prior to January 1, even after January 1. We were still talking about them as an Elite 8 team. So I think they've got the talent to do it. We'll see how it goes. But if I had to play, I'd be playing their team total over.
Yeah, and I'll make one final point before we move on to a different game. Iowa State forced 23 turnovers in that game with Arizona State last week. That is the main reason for the run, right? That is how you go on a 24-4 run most of the time. You're forcing turnovers in open play and getting easy buckets off of an offensive miscue for Arizona State. My gut tells me that we see that happen at some point in this game where Arizona State, they don't take great care of the basketball. Baylor wasn't going to expose them in that regard, but Iowa State certainly can. And one of those kill shot knockout punches, from Iowa State, and suddenly you could be sitting there down 15 with the Sun Devils trying to battle your way into the back door. So Iowa State or pass for me on this one. It seems like you like the team total, and we're aligned to start the day. So I think we're off to a good start here, Rob. And because we're off to such a good start, I'm gonna go now for the parlay, and I'm gonna give you guys one of my client plays. Another reason I'm gonna give this client play out is it tips off at 11:30 a.m. So some legitimate breakfast basketball. I'm on the East Coast, so it is lunch. I eat my lunch at 11:30 because I've already been up for most of the day at this point. But we've got a lunchtime tip here. St. Bonaventure. I've worn my zip up here, Rob. When St. Francis leaves D1 after this year, we'll be down to 2 Franciscan universities left in Division I. Those 2 Franciscan universities are Siena and St. Bonaventure, and they play every year for something called the Franciscan Cup. So Olean's only a couple hours from me. I like to see the local teams do well. And this was not a good year for the local team, St. Bonaventure. If the real local team, Syracuse, is probably had the worst year of anyone. But St. Bonaventure, Rob, we liked this team at one point in November and December. They managed to turn around and go 4-14 in Atlantic 10 play. Of course, we know that they're going to move on from Mark Schmidt, but it's a little, to me, it's a little bit of a different scenario because Mark Schmidt, 2 decades in Olean, took a St. Bonaventure team over that I believe got like the death penalty or had to cancel their season, if I remember correctly, way back in the early 2000s. I'm pretty sure the Bonnies had to like cancel the rest of a season, and then Schmidt took over after that. This is one, Rob, where you said Danny Hurley or Bobby Hurley. You don't know if they were going to show up for Bobby Hurley. You weren't really sure how that dynamic was going to take place. I think this St. Bonaventure team shows up for Schmidt, because I just think he's sort of revered in that area for the turnaround over the last 2 decades. And you look at LaSalle, Rob, they're very banged up. Like, how is LaSalle hanging this game? I love the Bonnies here, and I'm curious as to what you sort of see in this one.
Yeah, it's been an interesting year for St. Bonaventure, Adam. And the one thing that really didn't correlate with a Mark Schmidt coach team was the defensive output on that side of the floor for St. Bonnie. For years, you recognize them as kind of a, I don't know, 60 to 55 type team, 65 to 61 type team, hard-nosed defense, make enough shots. Here this year, the exact opposite, right? Their defense was like a sieve. Teams going through them. However, LaSalle fits that qualification as well. So you got two rather poor defenses, but the difference in offensive output here between these two is like night and day. St. Bonnie, the better offensive team. All that said, it's been a while since these two have played. LaSalle did win that game 78-74, well over the total in this one. The problem for LaSalle, again, like you just stated, is going to be some injuries here. I'm one, again, I kind of subscribe to the theory that friend and colleague Ski Prophet always brings up to me. If I can't trust you to get stops, I can't trust you to cover numbers. And generally speaking, when we say that, it's in terms of covering larger numbers. This number is in a range where I don't know if that applies. I think that St. Bonnie probably could outscore LaSalle in their current condition by this amount. I understand the move downward in the total, but then again, that's helpful to St. Bonaventure and their team total. In other words, they get penalized in this total move somewhat for LaSalle having a banged up roster here. So the number comes down, their team total, you have to equate everything, it goes down 74.5. I see some 75s and halves out there now, so people playing this side up a little bit. I could see that happening in this game. Again, you're in, this Pittsburgh Paints Arena, which is not necessarily an NBA arena. But still, I don't think sight lines should be very manageable here. It's not a stadium type setting. So I don't know. I guess a slight lean here towards the St. Bonaventure team total over because of current conditions and the full season form of the LaSalle defense. And on top of that, the 78-74 final in their only meeting, albeit a while back. I think the same type of, mid to upper 70s total could take place for St. Bonnie here.
Yeah, so I want to go back to that regular season meeting for a second, Rob. These two teams only played once during the regular season. The game was in Philly. LaSalle was the home team, and LaSalle won that game 78-74. But when you pull up the box score, Rob, you have Jerome Brewer went for 27, and Jaden Marshall went for 23. And neither of those guys will be on the court today for LaSalle because they're both hurt. So you look at, 50 of LaSalle's 78 points in that win over St. Bonaventure came from two guys that will not play today. Neutral floor early. Like I get, I thought the 5.5 number was low. It looks like it's up to 6.5 and 6 some places. That doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah. Can the 11:30 a.m. tip be a little bit sleepy? It can, but we're talking about over the course of 40 minutes. And Rob, the A10, the bottom half of the A10, if you're St. Bonaventure, you got to be looking at the next 2 days and saying, we can get to day 3. These are not these are not great teams at the bottom of the A10 so I think you see, just based on the schedule and how it played out, like Loyola Chicago and St. Bonaventure are down there at 4-14 in league play. For me, St. Bonaventure is just like a much superior team to Loyola Chicago. Yeah, I think they sort of got priced as bottom options in their respective games today. But the Bonnies, in my opinion, deserve more respect than they're getting relative to the other bottom teams in the league. And then I looked at the number 5.5 and I said, I don't think that those two guys are priced in the way they should be. Brewer and Marshall, especially based on what they did in the first meeting. So client play for me, St. Bonaventure, our Franciscan brother here in the state of New York, to Siena, -5.5, 11:30 a.m. tip. It's up to 6.5 some places. I see 6s out there. We're going to put that in the parlay, and we'll just take, we'll probably have to add juice, but I agree with that move. I think the Bonnies roll today.
Yeah, 50 of 78, just because I like to do mathematics. 50 of the 78 points scored by that duo comes out to around 62% of the points, Adam, which is, you need to account for that in the point spread here. And real quick, if St. Bonnie were to move on, it's George Mason tomorrow. Played George Mason a couple of times. The most recent one got beat up pretty good, 71-58. So certainly there would be a little bit of a revenge angle there. The first game was only a 3-point game. Like you say, that conference in general is kind of a conglomeration of mid to bad teams, with the exception of the couple at the top.
Yeah, and Jacob says Jacob says I wouldn't take Bonnie's -6. I actually still think at 6 that's a very good bet. My as I'm watching the board move, which it always does during our show, Rob. I would not be surprised if this got as high as like Bonnie's -7.5 or 7 over the next hour or so. I think you're going to see some later Bonnie's money here, which is what we're kind of looking at. As I look at the odds logic odd screen, I see some of the sharper books are going to 6.5. So I'm fine with Bonnie's -6. And like I said, that is what I will put into the parlay. We just may have to juice it depending on where that number is when we get off the show. Real quick promo. It's conference tournament season. I ended up with 4. I don't think I actually got so sort of jazzed up during the intro, Rob, to complain about Baylor that I never recapped my night, which was just a 2-2 night. Lost with Baylor, lost with Syracuse early, hit Siena, hit Montana at night. So pretty much a break even there for me. And then you can get my plays, all of Rob's plays, 3 days or the rest of the season, all the college basketball we play at WagerTalk. So www.wagertalk.com. We're both on there, and that great special is up. Garth's here in the building. We appreciate you donating every day, Garth. And hey, back-to-back losing days happens to literally everyone. You've been killing it here in the chat. 15-7 is awesome. Even if you have lost 2 in a row, that's still awesome. So let's talk about the game Garth wants to talk about, and we're going to go back to the Big 12. And he says, Rob, I'm going to try to get right and get back with Cincy -2.5 this afternoon. So I believe this is another early tip that likely goes. I got to get back to the spot here. I think they're probably right on. Yeah, they're on right after Arizona State. So that's probably going to tip off around 3 p.m. Eastern. Cincinnati is a short favorite against Central Florida. The resurgence has been on in Cincinnati over the last maybe month, 5 weeks or so. Do you think the Bearcats, Rob, carry that momentum into the Big 12 tournament?
Man, they didn't carry it yesterday. I mean, they sleptwalked through that game against Utah. Maybe that's a good sign for today that you can go ahead and play as miserably as Cincinnati did, especially to start that game. While I was watching it, I was thinking of Garth's post here yesterday about the first half total going over, and in all my brilliance, I suggested I'd rather be Cincinnati first half team total, thinking that Utah's poor defensively and they would probably give it up more than 36.5. And Cincinnati proceeds to go out and be totally dry on the offensive end. First 10 minutes of that game, 9 points, 29 first half. First half total didn't get there. Cincinnati first half team total did not get there. So like I say, it could set up for, that was their first game out in this tourney. Could have been, if you're Cincinnati, I shouldn't say look ahead. Wes Miller and Cincinnati shouldn't look ahead of anybody. But Utah was kind of one of those teams, Adam, that you and I, Kelly brought up the discussion on Saturday morning. And of course, in her context, she was kind of alluding to, do you find other teams across the country like a Kansas State who she follows closely, that you're just like, you know what, they've checked out. And it seemed like Utah was one of those we've checked out type of teams. But they played hard yesterday. Cincinnati gets by. Now they get to UCF. They played them twice. Doesn't happen often in these conferences, but they did get 2 meetings against UCF. UCF wins at home by 1 the first time. Cincy straightens it out in the more recent matchup about a month ago, win by 20, and absolutely squashed what's a really good Central Florida offense. And that's probably the difference in this game, is that Cincinnati is way more capable of that type of defensive performance. I think Johnny Dawkins' squad has done a really good job this year, but they are reliant on that offense being there, what carries them. And Cincinnati's got the ability to shut it down. I think we said yesterday, Cincinnati's sporadic. So, in my world, if they played a lousy offensive game yesterday and they're the kind of team that just kind of seesaws back and forth, good offensive performance, bad. Some days you watch Jizzle James and company, you're like, man, these guys are really good on offense. And you watch them the next game, and you're like, these guys stink. Maybe a bounce back effort out of Cincinnati here. I could see where Garth is going with this. I like the fact, and especially from a coaching standpoint, if you're Wes Miller, you kind of like the fact that you survived yesterday and you get to come back today, but you have coaching points because you should have beaten Utah worse, and you didn't wake up and start playing that game from the get-go. I think all that stuff adds up for Cincinnati here today in a positive way. So I could agree with where he's looking here. Central Florida is not an easy team to defeat. They've got some real quality wins in the Big 12 under their belt. But I do think in this instance, one game under their belt and the defensive edge that they have here probably gets Cincinnati through.
Yeah, it's a fascinating game because, Cincinnati, I think they played kind of out of their minds in February, especially shooting the basketball. This is not a great shooting team, 3-point shooting team. They've been outside pretty much the top 250 most of the year, top 200, and still are, even with their recent sort of good shooting form. So, if they don't shoot the ball well, I don't think they're going to win this game. And then UCF, it's they go out to Utah and sweep Utah and BYU on a road trip. And then they come back home, Rob, to teams that you got to like their chances to at least get one of these games. Home games against Baylor and Oklahoma State, and just looked gassed and exhausted in both of those games. Gave up 87 to Baylor, turn around, give up 111 to Oklahoma State, although I do think there was an extra period in that game. There was an overtime frame, but still, it's a ton of points. And then totally no-show your trip on the last weekend to West Virginia. So I kind of look at that and say, okay, is UCF going to have 5 days to go and regroup, rest, and show up ready to play here? Because they haven't looked ready to play since the BYU game. And that's what makes this so difficult because, we got to look at Cincinnati yesterday. Thank you for jogging my memory. That game was so uninteresting to me that I forgot it even happened, Rob. I had other stuff going on in that window, and I was like, so I forgot that Cincinnati even sort of had that sleepwalk past Utah yesterday. But yeah, it's very difficult because are you going to weigh in the fact, like you were saying, that Cincinnati has a game under their belt on this floor, or are you going to take that performance yesterday at face value? Because I'll tell you what, Rob, they play like they did against Utah today. They're not winning this game. Central Florida will win this game. So, man, Garth, I wish I could I wish I had more confidence here. You could make a pretty good case for UCF in this one, Rob, and I think you could convince me either way. To me, I look at this and there are big time sort of pros and cons for both of these teams. So I got nothing there, but Garth, if that is how you're going to roll today with Cincinnati, I'll certainly root for you because I don't think I got anything. I don't think I will have anything in that game for my clients. Okay. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that one before we move on?
Just the example that you used, Adam, of going out for the Utah sweep and then coming back home and looking lethargic. It could have been the altitude after they flew back home. 2 games in altitude, fly back home. Not really all there as far as legs go, but it's still no excuse to lose both of those games. And Yeah, it's what makes Cincinnati difficult. It's what makes Central Florida a little difficult. I think on paper, Central Florida might be my preference as the better team. I think the situation might stick up for Cincinnati a little bit here. We'll see. Cincinnati did win by 20 against this squad most recently, and you could treat that two ways as well. Treat it as revenge angle for UCF, or treat it as positive mindset for Cincinnati. We crushed these guys last time. Let's go get them again. We'll see how it goes. It's a difficult game, but get your get back, Garth. I mean, we've all been there where we want to just, you know what, I want to get it back with this team. We'll see how that one goes.
All right, listen, it is still Championship Wednesday. There are still 3 bids that are going to be handed out in games today. So I want to talk about at least one of the conference championship games that go tonight. And Rob, I scrolled through the chat, and the most I've seen from, like, at least on my quick scroll here, it looks like people want to talk about the Big Sky Championship game, the last game on the board, the Drew Martin Betts Degenerate Special in that 11:30 Eastern time slot. Montana. Hats off to Montana. They have come into this, and they've played as good as they've played pretty much all year. The last couple games, Money Williams has been insane. Just doing whatever he wants. Gets to the foul line. 40 points in the quarterfinal game. And then last night, Rob, he came out with 32. I had to just double check that because I know he was getting close to over 30 again. He came out with 32 points to beat Portland State. Now he takes on Idaho. And Rob, this is another team I think is going to have a hard time defending Money Williams. They also foul a ton. So talk to me about Idaho, Montana. This is your Big Sky Conference. I've had Montana back-to-back days and cash bowl tickets. Do I just continue to ride the Grizzlies here? What do you think?
I'll tell you, I should have continued to ride Idaho. Talked about how Idaho was a gut feeling play first game in this tournament. They win. Should have come back with them last night. I made a big deal a couple of weeks ago, Adam, maybe 2.5 weeks ago now, when Colton Mitchell was absent from the team, their number one point guard. They were playing Eastern Washington that night. I bet Eastern Washington, even without Mitchell, Biko Johnson took over as the point guard. And what you found out in that game, and what I should have just played, I gave too much consideration to EWU, their hot streak, and their mindset for revenge. So I didn't play Idaho, but you watch that game again last night, and you just see Idaho's got playmakers. It is Colton Mitchell. And obviously, the Big Sky doesn't get a lot of attention. Think of the kid at Tulane, Rowan, and now I'm missing the kid's last name.
Rowan Brumbaugh.
Yeah, and Brumbaugh. Think of it in that, but smaller. Colton Mitchell was going past defenders like they were standing still last night, as was Biko Johnson. When he gets a chance to touch the ball, when Mitchell's on fire, it just doesn't matter. They got the freshman of the year, power forward, stretch four. They've got a lot of offensive tools. So what I did was last night, and of course, you said you've been up most of the day. I was up till 5 a.m. and then tried to get a few hours of sleep in before we do the show. But I'm scrolling through the box and I'm like, how did Idaho do against Montana this year? And what you find is that Montana beat them twice, virtually by the same scores, win by 5, win by 6. Biko Johnson did have a really nice game against them, but the guy who had 2 bad games against Montana, Colton Mitchell, is surprising to me, but Montana found a way to defend him. On the other side, Money Williams had 1 big game, not so big the second game. They found a way to defend him. But where it all comes to a head here is Idaho is an offensive-based team. They're not really that good defensively, Adam. They can be had on the defensive side. But they didn't play really good offensively against Montana this year. Somehow Montana had answers for them. Idaho shoots 4 of 23 from 3. First time around. Second time around, they averaged less than a point per possession. It wasn't good for a team that I view as a really, really good offensive team in Big Sky context. I don't know. My gut feeling is Idaho will show up here tonight because they just when you have guys in a conference like this, and I know you pointed out in lower conference quite a bit, when you have guys, and I think Towson is a team that you use as an example. And when you have guys that can get to the rim, get past their defenders, kind of at will, those teams generally succeed in these types of conferences. Idaho has two that you just can't get in front of. Somehow Montana was able to get in front of them. Can they do it a third time? I mean, the game plan's been good. It hasn't produced huge wins. They've been nail biters both times. And I will say this, the fluctuation in these games, this was in my notes. I forgot to say this, but let me just get this out there. The fluctuation in these games has been crazy. The most recent game, Idaho took a 13-point lead at the outset. Halfway through, they're winning by 13. 27-point turnaround in that game. Montana outscores them by 27 and leads by 14 towards the end of the game. But in the first game, you had the same thing. Montana led by 18 in the first half. Idaho comes all the way back, takes the lead, and then gets outscored 8-0 in the last 90 seconds to lose. So I don't know, Adam. Montana's found a way to win. They've both blown leads. So I guess that's a great case for in-game. Wait till somebody gets a lead and then just go the other way with these two. Man, I'm partial to Idaho here with these playmakers, but I've also always been partial to Money Williams. Difficult game. I do think that the total's kind of low here. To tell you the truth, I'm sitting here talking about all these guards that can get to the rim and have big scoring nights. The totals come down, 147.5 to 145.5. I think that's to be expected. In a conference championship game, it's like automatic money, right? Conference championship game under. These teams have played too many games in too many days, et cetera, et cetera. Idaho's been bet down a little bit. I was surprised they were the favorite, to tell you the truth, Adam. And I'll let you get, because if you like Montana and you've been on that crusade with Montana, you have to like the fact that they're getting points here. I mean, what is Idaho doing favored? But I do like the over in that game.
Yeah, so that's kind of the that's the, I guess, conundrum I'm in here, but I've been on Montana, so I kind of want to continue to ride Montana, but I do think like this number, so it was 1.5, 2.5, is probably where it's supposed to be. So I make Idaho -1.5. That's my number for this. So obviously at 2.5, I definitely see a little bit of value in Montana, but I'm just gonna settle on, just for the sake of making a pick in this game before we go to a different game. Rob, I like the over as well, because I don't want to bet against Money Williams right now. And I know Idaho is prone to fouling. So, this dude went in the Northern Colorado game. He went 18 for 19 from the free throw line because they just didn't have an answer for him. And as soon as they got into the team foul trouble, Montana just kept feeding him the ball. They couldn't defend him without fouling. He's on the line for 19 free throws. Portland State, a much better defensive team, still had trouble with Money Williams. So how does Idaho defend that? They probably don't. On the flip side, though, Idaho is probably going to score their points. And they're a team that can get hot and do it in a hurry. They can hit threes. They will take a high volume of three-pointers when things are going good. And if they're going in, I kind of think the over might be the way to go in this one. Maybe even more so than Montana, who it's like, listen, you got to, what did I say yesterday? Sometimes you got to know when to get off the ride, Rob. I was riding for 2 games, winner on Sunday, winner on Monday. My gut tells me to get off the ride and just bet the over here. It's probably the better look.
Yeah, the free throw shooters on the other side, if Johnson and Mitchell have the ball, they're just as good at the free throw line. Last thing I'll add here, Adam, and I don't remember the numbers exactly, but an intangible here that could come into play is the broadcast team was bringing up the fact that the Idaho Vandals have played X amount of games. I think it was 16 games inside Idaho Central Arena, which is where this tournament has been played, and have had extreme success in this arena, including a game during the regular season, non-conference part, I think, and then inside this tournament, and then going back. Idaho's another one of those teams. You talked about Siena not winning for 16 years. Idaho, I think, hasn't won their conference tournament in forever. Which was being brought up a lot, and the venue was being brought up a lot as pro-Idaho. Could be a deciding factor here, and could actually be a reason why this line, you said you made your number 1.5, could be a reason why it was padded a little bit to -3 on the opener. I know each team gets, ticket sales, and Montana's going to travel well, but this arena's been good to Idaho.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and makes it even more that I think I'd play the over instead of the side in that game. All right, let's go to Brett Kinney. Thank you, Brett, for the donation, and we'll absolutely talk about your game. This is conference title game number 2 of 3 of them tonight. He says thoughts on the Southland Conference Championship. Does the 3 OT affect McNeese? I didn't have a dime on that game last night, Rob, but boy was I pulling for UT Rio Grande Valley. I've been high, I've liked them this year, and it really would have been cool to see them in the title game. You know who else would have probably loved to see that, Rob? Stephen F. Austin would have loved to see that, because they were a shot or two away from getting a Rio Grande Valley team that just played multiple overtimes in the championship game. Instead, what they get is a true road game, because this conference tournament is being entirely held at McNeese's arena. So what a difference in opponent right there. Like, because of course, Stephen F. Austin, if they're watching the game last night, Rob, once it goes to overtime number 1 and then overtime number 2, pretty much a coin flip as to who can win that game. It ends up being McNeese. And now you're on the road, technically, if you're Stephen F. Austin, to go to the NCAA tournament. But man, this conversation's come up both of the times that these two teams played in the regular season. And both of the times, I remember not being able to truly make a case for a side. It felt very much like a coin flip to me in those games on the number. And I can't say that I feel much differently here. But Rob, if I remember correctly, did you nail the total in when we talked about both of these on the show earlier this year? I know specifically there was one where we both looked at each other and was like, how does this game not go under? And then it stayed under by a mile. So what do you got? Southland Conference Championship game tonight. McNeese, Stephen F. Austin.
Yeah, unfortunately for you and I, we're not getting a price in that mid 140s range tonight. Otherwise, we'd be saying the same thing. What are we missing here? Why aren't we just pounding the under? Both games this year went under the total. And to Stephen F. Austin's defense, they played in this arena once already this year, lost by 2 points to McNeese, 66-64. Second game went Stephen F. Austin's way, 67-60. The one thing you can take away from both of those games is the defense reigned supreme. It was difficult to score points in either of those games, which, this total being bet down, I sometimes, and even today I did again, come on and just kind of mock the rush to under in conference championship games. This one's justified in my mind. I mean, betting it down from 137.5 to 134.5 with one team playing triple overtime last night. Not only did McNeese have to go triple overtime, they were the late game. I mean, that game didn't end till really late last night. And the difference in that game last night, Adam, I'll point it out. Rio Grande Valley, 24 turnovers, 28% of their possessions wound up in turnovers. Otherwise, you go through it statistically, and they did everything they needed to do to win. McNeese's offense was over. And real quick on the fatigue factor, the trio of Duell, Garcia, and Johnson, those three guys all play 49, 48, and 40 minutes and have to come right back into another grinder against Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin was not very good themselves offensively last night. Corpus Christi almost got them. I mean, it could have been Rio Grande Valley and Corpus Christi, honestly, in this title game. So both of the favorites, they were the two best teams in the league all year long, both offensively, defensively, record-wise, everything. In any category, they were 1 and 2. Meet for the third time. There's no secrets. Everybody knows each other's offense, their play sets, etc. This game's perked up here. 1.5 all the way up now a full point to 2.5. And I'm looking at a couple of threes. Not sure I agree. I kind of lean toward the thought in the chat that the 3 overtimes would affect McNeese, just simply based on the way this game is going to play out, where both teams just dig in and play really hard defense, which takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort. I'm not saying McNeese can't pull through with the home crowd behind them. Certainly they can. I'd probably lean Stephen F. Austin. Those who got in at 137.5 and played under, I think you did the right thing. 134.5, it's probably still the right thing, but I'd be a little more leery at this price to stay under. Give me really slight leads at him, which would be a great game. To Stephen F. Austin, plus the points, and another potential under. The first two, if I just add them up real quick here, 127 and 130. Those both are underneath what they're asking for tonight.
Yeah, I was just trying to go back and look at some box scores again from those first couple of meetings. That the thing that I'll be the most interested in from a matchup standpoint is Keon Thompson, because that's the thing in both of those games. Because of course they split the regular season meetings. Stephen F. Austin, I believe, won or McNeese won the first one. Stephen F. Austin won the second one. But even in the losing effort, Rob, they were still very, very good against Keon Thompson. They completely shut him down in the first meeting. The second meeting, at a quick glance, you'll see that he scored 21 points, but that was on like 6 for 17 shooting from the field. So the reason that's so important to this matchup is because a lot of what Stephen F. Austin is able to do offensively kind of runs through him. And so you got to ask yourself, if McNeese has had success sort of taking him out of like the game to an extent where he's just not totally like destroying you, I don't know. That would make me like McNeese, certainly, then knowing that you're also getting them on their home floor in a conference final. Intriguing game. Another one that I don't know if I'll have a bet on, but I think we laid out some points that would help you, bet the game if you want to bet the game, because that's what we're here to do as well. But, Rob Vino, we also do give bets out on this show, contrary to sometimes what people think. We do give bets out in the hour on this show, and I will throw it to you. Do you have any idea where you want to go with the parlay for today?
Yeah, I'm going to stick to I've been kind of waiting on this game first round to happen here. I said a couple of weeks ago, no, not even, maybe less than 10 days ago, that I thought Sam Houston State had a really good opportunity to win this Conference USA tournament. And tonight they get matched up with New Mexico State. Only played once in league play, New Mexico, and it was before Christmas, Adam, December 21st. You can't really put a lot of stock into anything that happened before Christmas. However, just to run through it real quick, New Mexico State wins that game 87-78. Game was played at New Mexico State, so Sam Houston was on the road in that one. What I see out of this team offensively right now is as good as any offensive personnel inside this league. Obviously, Liberty can shoot the threes, but Liberty doesn't play with any pace. They're more efficiency than they are pace. Sam Houston is going to play with a lot of pace. New Mexico State had to go through the Jacksonville State game last night. And Jacksonville State, as we all know, they're constantly, annually, just a grinding type team. New Mexico State gets thrown in front of a different type of opponent tonight. Thought this line was a little short, and also thought the team total here for Sam Houston State maybe a little bit light. I would expect them to get 80 in this game. Again, I forget who I was mentioning earlier. Maybe it was St. Bonaventure as a team under Mark Schmidt that we constantly think of as and perception is everything for a lot of bettors until you make adjustments. But annually, we get St. Bonaventure as a hard-nosed defensive team. We don't get that this year. New Mexico State for years, all defense, no offense, right? Have 1 7-footer in the middle, play a ton of defense, score 62 points, win a game. Not the case this year. Don't play a lot of defense. I could see Sam Houston State running this up into the mid-80s. The deciding factor becomes, do you want to play side? Do you want to play total? And I'm just going to stick with side here for purposes of the show parlay, Adam. I think Sam Houston State at -5. The 4.5s are long gone. It opened at 4. I'm seeing 5.5s, but certainly you can get 5 out there if you shop well enough. There's places where that's available. So I'm going to take Sam Houston State -5 to what I think could be a double-digit win here against New Mexico State in this game. Like this team, hopefully they live up to my expectations and get us home tonight in the parlay.
Yeah, I can't disagree with it. I don't have much to add there. So what I'm going to do is go to We'll leave it at that. We will use Sam Houston State -5 in the parlay. If I have to add some extra juice in, I will. But like we always say, goes without saying, shop around. I mean, there's usually, especially I've noticed when the spreads are in that range, Rob, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5. That's where like books almost always have like differ a little bit, in my opinion. So it's almost like if you shop around on a 5.5, somewhere you'll find a 5. You shop around on a 6.5, somewhere you'll find a 6. So just keep that in mind. But it'll be 5 for the sake of the parlay. All right, Garth, he's in here with another donation, and this is actually going to be a fascinating sort of discussion. So we've got Mountain West Tournament, Rob. We've talked on this show quite a few times about Air Force games flying over the total, despite the fact that they are one of the worst teams in the country, and they really struggle to put the ball in the basket. Garth says one that caught his eye is a first half under Air Force Nevada. And I guess this goes one of two ways, because I felt like Air Force packed it up for the season a long time ago. Yep, that also could mean they've packed up wanting to put any effort in on the defensive end. So what do you make of that? And then talk to me about the total. Garth wants to know first half under Air Force Nevada. Do you want your money on that under, Rob, is what I'm trying to ask.
Well, Nevada's the team that kind of wrecked that over streak from Air Force just the other day. I think you, me, and Kelly talked about this game on Saturday. And yes, I had said at the time, right, the one thing you worry about is Steve Alford's offensive philosophy, where, Nevada's been a pretty good team this year. They've beaten a lot of the upper echelon, and they're live to win this whole thing. The other day, that total got steamed up. I'm talking from full game right now, Garth. Bear with me here, but full game total got steamed up simply because the streak of Air Force overs was becoming so well known by everybody that we're just almost automatically knee-jerk reaction, mechanically going to the window with Air Force games over. Got bid up to 147.5. That total got left at the altar if you came too late, because it ended 147. Early money got there. But for Nevada in that game, they put up 40 first half points. Didn't really take their foot off the brake, because it's hard, or off the gas, excuse me. It's hard to take your foot off the gas against Air Force, because the defense is so non-resistant that you can't help but score against them, whether you're plotting like Nevada likes to do, or if you're running, you're going to score on them. The interesting part, Adam, to your point, is that Air Force is able to do their part in most of these games. I mean, I guess it could be a fact where the other side just, it comes so easy that why bother playing defense against these guys? Why bother killing yourself when you're going to score 6 for every 3 they score? I'd have a tough time betting under. The one main reason I think I would like maybe a first half under here, it's in Thomas and Mack, right? It's first opening game for everybody here. Nevada likely, in fact, without a doubt, has the larger portion of the crowd. And I think that to start off a tournament, just knowing Steve Alford's temperament, it's going to be defensively focused. I mean, he's going to have his guys ready from the outset. And if Air Force is going to have a tough shooting half, I'm going to absolutely pin the burden of your total play, Garth, on Air Force's inability first half to score. I think Nevada defense would be the reason. If that bet wins, it'll be Nevada's defense just shutting Air Force down. And that would come from the head coach. That would come from, the kind of rah-rah mentality that goes with the opening tip of a conference tournament that you believe you have a chance to win. So I'm not going to disagree with it, but Air Force overs have been a real thing this year, and it's just hard for me to bet into that. Now, you've isolated it. Maybe we get a win there for the reasons I described. So, like I said, I won't talk you off of that at all.
Yeah, the more I look at this game, the more I think the under in any capacity makes sense. So, Rob, I'm looking at Ken Pom right now, just to find a tempo rating, and Air Force is up now 248th in tempo. Now, that's actually significant, because Air Force the last few years has been way, way near the bottom. And I think to your point, and I forget who else someone else made that point. I can't remember who. But it was basically like, okay, Air Force, they're still coming up as a team that when you look at the analytic sites, it looks like they play slow, but they just kind of started they tried to go faster because they couldn't score anyway. Joe Scott, his thing was always, hey, let's have as few possessions as possible, because the fewer the possessions, the better the chance we have to win. Of course, Joe Scott takes his leave. Air Force starts playing faster. That doesn't work either. So I would not be at all surprised to see Air Force show up and say, okay, our only chance today is to make this game as few possessions as possible. And for Nevada to be like, sure, because that's the type of game we'd rather play anyway, right? Nevada is bordering on being top 3, outside the top 300 in tempo this year. So they're way down there. I think I saw them at like 280 something, right? So like, if you think Nevada can dictate pace in this game, I could kind of see Air Force being inclined to play the slower game and just revert back to, hey, we're a 20-point dog. We're not going to win a track meet with this team. So let's just go back to doing what we did for years, where it was like, let's make this as few possessions as possible and hope Nevada has an inefficient day in the half court. And then maybe we sniff having a chance in this game, which of course last year for Air Force would have worked because they had Ethan Taylor who could hit any shot at any time. This year, they don't really have that, Rob. So, hey, you want to talk about a full game under? This might be a game where Air Force scores 48 points and loses, right? So I'm with you, Garth. But me personally, I think I prefer the full game more than the first half, because my gut says that Air Force plays the game Nevada wants to play, and that Nevada, being the significant team, but far significant of these two teams, is able to dictate tempo. So I'm kind of with you on a full game under as well. All right, let's see. We're basically at the end of the show. I'll give you one more rapid fire. I am off the DL after my little brief trip to the ER. I am going to take a ride down to Bethlehem, PA tonight, Rob Vino, to watch Boston University take on Lehigh in the Patriot League final. And the reason we can do this in 3 minutes here, this is good luck figuring this game out. This is as coin flip as it gets for me. These two teams could not be more evenly matched. I truly have no clue who's going to win this game. But I'll tell you what, it's going to be fun as hell to watch, because I think Stabler Arena, which is where Lehigh plays, 6,200 seat arena, which is pretty big for the Patriot League, is just about sold out. So I don't know. My sister went to undergrad at BU, so maybe I'll root for them. Do you have anything in Lehigh BU for the people quick before we wrap this thing up?
It's funny. I've got a good friend who's a Lehigh grad. I've got a cousin who's a Lehigh grad. So we got both ends of the alumni covered here. I'll say this really fast. I think Boston U has slight better personnel. They've come on as the season's gone on, as they've got healthier. I think we've documented that a few times here. But Lehigh's hot stretch has been crazy here. So it's hard to bet against that when you're betting into a home floor as well. Not only is McNeese at home, but Lehigh's at home. So tough. I think Boston used a slightly better team. They're taking a little bit of money here. Rounded out real fast with something that I think is really interesting here. Adam, SMU, Louisville. SMU supposedly got off the bubble yesterday because they won that game. I don't know if they were to get blown out by Louisville here today. Maybe people would change their minds. But the injury situation here for both sides, no Mikel Brown for Louisville, no BJ Edwards still for SMU. Boopy Miller came through yesterday. I wanted to play this game in the worst way because I've had success with it one time. The other time I didn't. There were split results. Man, that's such a fun game here. I wish they would all be healthy for this one. But I wonder if SMU is not a good look here without Brown on the floor for Louisville.
Yeah, I kind of my number is suggesting I should play Louisville, but I just couldn't get over not having Brown, and the fact that that's another team that constantly burns me one way or the other is Louisville. So I'm not even going to really give an opinion out there, other than the fact that my number shows a little bit of value toward Louisville. All right, let's just 2-teamer. Let's keep it simple today, Rob. We hit a 2-teamer 2 days ago. We got crazy with a 3-teamer yesterday. It didn't work out. So St. Bonaventure, -5.5 is a client play for me. I'm going to go -6 in the parlay. And Sam Houston State, we'll go -5. That's Rob's leg of the parlay. And I will attach juice to both of those legs so it comes out roughly the same. I'll tell you what, if you want to take it a step further for yourself, a St. Bonaventure to Sam Houston moneyline parlay is probably a pretty good bet as well, because I kind of don't see either of those two teams losing. So that's the show today. We greatly appreciate you tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow. We've got another crazy slate of hoops tomorrow and Friday. Saturday, we're on with Kelly in Vegas. And then Sunday, I believe we have a selection special show with all of us. So we're going to be around all weekend, just talking ball. And we really appreciate you guys tuning in on a daily basis. Again, the parlay, St. Bonaventure -6, Sam Houston State -5. Maybe bet yourself a little money line parlay to go with it. And Rob and I will be back in the morning for more Full Court Press.